And welcome to our first ever, well, technically second ever video podcast. We did try and do one a couple of days ago, and I didn't think it was recording, so I stopped it halfway through, and turns out it was recording, so we didn't finish it, and I don't know.
Oh, what else would they expect from us, really?
Right? So welcome to the first ever video cast for General Geekery. With me, as always, is JD.
Hello.
I think we started our last cast with absolutely no plan, and then just it kind of went off the rails about a COVID-19 discussion. So instead of quarantine and chill this time, I think we actually have something that we want to talk about today. And that is, thanks to CBS for making this available for free for what was 1 month, now 2 months free, CBS All Access or Access or whatever they're calling it, to watch Picard, the new Star Trek series.
I've been a paid subscriber to CBS All Access since before Discovery even started. So I know nothing about free access. So
Yeah. Patrick Stewart mentioned it. He's reading A Sonnet a Day by Shakespeare. It's kind of like a motivational thing on YouTube or Facebook or wherever he's doing it. I don't know who's hosting it through, but he mentioned it about 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago already. That CBS was going to do all access for free for a month, and then they bumped it up to 2 months. So we decided to get the free access to watch Picard, because both my wife and I are huge Star Trek fans, as is JD.
Yes.
So, what did you think?
Well, before the show started, I was like off the charts excited. I mean, I love TNG. Picard's a great character. The press that they did for the show beforehand, including last year or the coverage from, I guess, Comic-Con or whatever, they had interviews with all the cast members, all the major cast members, the new characters and the returning characters, and it all sounded fantastic. And beforehand, to hear from the creators about how much passion there was behind the scenes and everything, I thought we were gonna get like Picard's return, and it was gonna be kind of like a Zen-like experience for Star Trek fans to return to this. I don't know, return to this time period in the galaxy that, well, at least for this era, had been off the air for a long time. And then once the show started, it was different, but I liked it. Picard's retired, and he's got these two Romulans working with him that were great characters.
Yeah, I like characters.
This girl comes in. She's kind of a mystery, but she says she needs Picard's help, and there's a backstory set up that it kind of starts. It plays off the destruction of Romulus that was mentioned in JJ Trek, and it turns out that after that disaster, the Federation was going to help with, I guess, rescues and relocating the survivors, and there's an attack on Mars by synthetic life forms, androids, and there's a backstory set up real quick before it flashes forward 14 years, and we start out with Picard where he is right then. And after a couple episodes, the show got super depressing and stayed that way for about 4 episodes, and then came around at the end, and I got back into it. But for the first time through, I'm like, how am I not? How have they managed to make a Star Trek series that I can't just outright enjoy from the beginning? I mean, it
It's
really
so
went off in
interesting that something that you said that you and I like things for the same reasons, but we dislike things for different reasons.
Yeah.
And I thought that I hadn't thought about it like that, but you're absolutely right. Because I started watching it. I had the same hopes you did. I was like, right on, because I was thinking about it today. I was like, what is my favorite series of Star Trek? And I grew up watching the original series every night on syndication. So I mean, I had a very warm place in my heart for that. But Star Trek: The Next Generation was my Star Trek. It was the first one that was on the air when I was growing up. So I would say Next Generation is probably my favorite. And yeah, I was kind of yes and no. I have to agree with some of the stuff. Yeah, I thought the Romulans were cool. The backstory was forced. I hated Bruce Maddox in the TV show to begin with. And he seemed like a fucking idiot. They couldn't figure out how to tie his shoes, let alone create synthetic life forms. And then all of a sudden, there's another Sung. And yeah, and I honestly am so sick of rogue Federation officers and moles. And it's like, how many times do we have to see a Commodore go bad or an Admiral be evil before the Federation just strips Starfleet down to its bones and rebuilds it? I mean, I am so tired of conspiracy theories in Star Trek. It's just
there's a case to be made that there is such a thing as admirals that are stand-up people, that are great people. There are admirals that we saw on screen. There was Admiral Ross in Deep Space Nine. There was Admiral Nechayev on both TNG and then on Deep Space Nine. And they are stand-up officers with integrity that truly do have the Federation's and Starfleet's interests in mind.
Yeah.
But for every one of those, there's 3 more that have their own agendas, and they're playing against the system, and they're corrupt as all fuck. And that's what we ended. Okay, let's see. We had that in TNG. I mean, we had that in TOS. There was a first season episode of TNG called Conspiracy, where it turns out that these commanders at Starfleet were invested with something and they were working against the Federation. And then we saw that again later on Star Trek 6. There's a whole cabal of admirals that don't want the Klingons in the Federation. So they arrange to set up Kirk and McCoy as assassins. And then, we saw that a lot. I mean, we saw on Deep Space Nine, there was an admiral that was a good friend of Cisco's, and it turns out he was actually working with the Maquis.
Yeah, well, and where wasn't there? And then what about the admiral where they made Benjamin Sisko like chief security officer of Starfleet on Earth?
Oh, that's right, because he'd been replaced by one of the founders.
Yeah,
the changelings. And then.
And Jesus, have we ever seen a Commodore that wasn't evil or insane?
I think they've been mentioned. I don't know if we've seen one. I know the second to last TNG movie, they had that admiral that was working with those people with that skin condition to move those people off the idyllic planet because it was like a fountain of youth thing, and he was selling out he was selling out everybody just to help these people because it turns out, hey, money was a motivation.
Right.
It's I can't remember if they had a corrupt admiral in Enterprise, but I have to think they did.
Yeah, I think there was. I've only seen a couple of episodes here and there, but yeah, there's definitely been conspiracy stuff in Starfleet at the end, the last couple episodes. It's huge.
You're right. There was the Terra Prime movement at the end of that, where Section 31 got involved.
And I, just as an aside, I saw a rumor. I don't know if you've seen it, that they're going to do. Well, number one, they're going to do a second season of Picard, but that's not where I was going with that. What you had mentioned was Section 31. I had seen somewhere that they are going to do a Section 31 series.
They are, but it's not going to be anything that you're imagining it's going to be. Section 31 is okay. Section 31. It's a secret organization within Starfleet they're basically, okay, what the Tal Shiar were for the Romulans, what the Obsidian Order was for the Cardassians, is basically what Section 31 is for Starfleet.
I kind of always imagined them as like the CIA.
They are. They're CIA. They're a lot of black ops. They don't work within the chain of command. We saw Section 31 brought into Enterprise towards the end. It was created on Deep Space for the Deep Space Nine television show. There was Section 31 was brought into. It even existed in the JJ verse in Star Trek Into Darkness. Peter Weller's character was Section 31.
I think that was
and a corrupt and he was super corrupt.
Yeah.
Section 31 is also used in Discovery. I know you haven't seen Discovery.
No, I have not.
So I'm not gonna spoil it, but there is a Section 31 in there, but it's handled differently, and I'm not crazy about it. It doesn't. I mean, it's a black ops organization, so technically they don't have to conform to anybody's vision. They have their own agenda.
Right.
The problem with that show is Section 31 before this was rarely known by people outside of Section 31. They always had their own agenda, and they were talked about it as if the rest of Starfleet didn't know about them, where it's a little more public in Discovery, and it's kind of a weird way to go with it. You can retcon it to say after some of the shit they pulled that they were reclassified, so they went deep cover. I guess that works, but that's kind of the Section 31 that they're working on is earlier in the timeline, not in the 24th century. So I don't know.
That's where I'd like to see it.
So I don't know if the Section 31 show they're planning is going to return it to being a deep cover operation, or I don't know what they're going to do with it. I will say going into Picard, I expected a lot of callbacks and fan service, and that is what we got. I wanted something really different, and that is what we got. I wasn't looking for a Star Trek show that was going to bring Picard back and have basically the adventures of old Picard in space. I wasn't looking for that.
Yeah, I don't know what I was looking for. I just wanted to see. I don't know. I just kind of that reminiscent feeling. You just want to see your favorite characters on screen again.
That's it. I wasn't specifically looking for anything in particular, but what I was not expecting to find, and why I was profoundly disappointed a couple episodes in, was that they basically took all the ideals behind Star Trek. I mean, it's been twisted before. I mean, well over half of the run for Deep Space Nine plunges Starfleet and the Federation into a galaxy-wide war. Nothing wrong with that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been, they've gone off the script. No, they've gone off the beaten path before. The vision that Roddenberry had, where humans always lived in peace, they've gone off of that before, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what I felt like with Picard was that they further twisted the formula a lot like a washcloth being wrung out from all the water, except that there's no water. It turns out that it was soaked by blood, and they just wring the shit out of it. They twisted it all up. They basically went with, hey, we can make an R-rated Star Trek show, and that's kind of what they did. There was a lot of graphic violence that I thought was unnecessary. There was. I'm not against swearing in my TV shows, obviously. I mean, fuck, we swear on this podcast all the time.
I was gonna say that was gonna be my next thing. Was I swear like a well-educated sailor, but in Star Trek, it just seems out of place.
It does. It seems out of place.
Seems forced.
It's not unwarranted, but they said it in. I think it was said at least once in every episode of Picard. And in most of those cases, it felt like they were saying it just to say it.
About the only person that it didn't seem forced from was 7 of 9.
And see, I don't remember her even saying it.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, swearing in general.
Oh no, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying she's the one character. She's one character that I don't remember hearing them swear. There's an admiral at Starfleet that says it a couple of times. And again, I'm not opposed to it in Star Trek. I'm not saying they shouldn't use that. It doesn't feel natural though.
Yeah, it just seems out of place.
It's a lot like there was a show on ABC called Designated Survivor, where it sets up the one guy, the Capitol blows up, there has to be a new president, and for 2 seasons it ran on ABC, so it had to conform to network television standards. Well, for the third season, it was canceled off network TV. ABC canceled it, so Netflix picked up the rights, and they made a third season, and straight out of the gate on that show, like 5 minutes into the third season, they're dropping the F-bomb a couple of times. And all of a sudden, I felt the same way. I'm like, just because you can doesn't mean you need to.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's set in the real world where, hey, people, they use this language all the time. I mean, there's definitely times on Star Trek where there's plenty of situations where it could have been appropriate.
Sure.
But it just seemed so weird. It just felt like they were doing it because they could.
Yeah.
And the violence was turned up to 11 sometimes, and I didn't necessarily feel like it needed to be. There is something to be said for violence to be just off screen. There is something to be said for cutting away from things, and you don't necessarily have to show all the gory details. It's not that Star Trek hasn't been violent before. Hell, it's been gory before.
Yeah.
But god damn it, she pulled that Borg implant out of his eye, and he died of agony, basically, or was dying in agony. It was just uncomfortable.
And I think one of my biggest complaints is one of the biggest reasons that I absolutely hate 2009 forward movies. Fucking lens flare. Holy shit, the lighting and the unsteady camera angles. I mean, it made J.J. Abrams lens flares look like a candle compared to the shitty lighting these guys were doing.
All right.
I mean, one scene they're on the ship, and you can see. I mean, Picard's ear is translucent because there is so much light coming in from behind him.
Now, see, it's funny because those kind of details, I've heard all the complaints about JJ's lens flare. Honestly, it doesn't bother me. I have no reaction to it. I don't notice it a lot of times. I notice it when it's a scene in space and you see a lot of reflective light off like the ships and stuff. But the actual like the indoor lens flare and all, I don't notice it.
I'm a photographer, and to me, lens flare is it's a poor technique. It's a lazy technique for people that don't know how to light or don't have the creativity to do lighting.
See, you're coming from a different viewpoint than I do. You're a photographer. You understand that kind of stuff. Yeah, I don't have an eye for technical shit.
We don't like things for different reasons.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, the lens flare has never bothered me. Honest to God, the shaky cam and that kind of stuff, I'm so used to that from every television show that I watch. It doesn't bother me in the least. So the handheld camera, none of that bothers me. I felt like a lot of times when I was watching Picard, there were instances where I felt the actual humanity of these characters was sometimes it was kind of refreshing. Like we got to see people feeling at their lows and you know, and sometimes on other Star Trek series is, you know, somebody's going through something and you feel like they didn't explore far enough how bad a state of mind they were in.
Yeah.
And sometimes there would be a plot line that you thought should linger for longer, and maybe it was glossed over or ignored altogether. When Worf's the mother of his child, when she's assassinated on the show.
What's her name? That's going to bother me.
It was Kalar, Ambassador Kalar. He did mourn for her on the show, but we didn't get to see a lingering effect of it unless you count Alexander, his son, who he just sent to go live at the Earth colony with his parents who raised him anyways. Whatever.
Yeah, but they kept coming back to it, so I'm going to disagree with you on that. But I see your point.
Well, that's true.
But I would say that they did a good job with that, and that's why I liked Captain Rios. I thought he was a prime example of that. I really liked that character.
I was not a fan of Captain Rios in general, but what I did really like was his emergency hologram versions that all looked like him, but they had distinctive styles, different personalities, different accents. I found them, like, I think it was the last or maybe the second to last episode, when Rafi is standing there and she's having a conference call with all 5 of the holograms, because they're all because they're all talking about Captain Rios from their different perspectives, different parts of his personality, and I got a kick out of that, where I found the actual guy to be I don't have a problem with him having PTSD. I get it, especially after he told the story of what he went through, why he got it. That made perfect sense. But I felt like his deep trauma was more interesting being told as an outside perspective from them. Yeah, they were, at first I found them to be a little grating because I thought, well, we had what? The emergency navigation hologram, the emergency medical hologram, the emergency engineering hologram, the emergency hospitality hologram. That
Yeah,
one
I
cracked me up.
kick out him the most.
Um, and there was another one, but I can't. And I like the fact that there was a naming gimmick uh, that they were like the emergency medical hologram was Emmett, I think. Like they used the acronyms and made names out of them, and I was amused by that. But you know what I thought about one of the times that I thought something. Remember after Picard was assimilated by the Borg, and then um, he becomes Locutus, and then he's rescued, and Dr. Crusher reverses it and rescues him, and Picard is back. They spend one episode after that where he goes back to Earth
Yeah,
with the Vineyard,
yeah, I just saw
with
that
his
one.
and where he fights with his brother a lot.
Yes,
And he is obviously deeply traumatized from the experience of being assimilated. Who wouldn't be?
right.
But after that, it's really not brought up on the show again until it's kind of mentioned in First Contact when Starfleet first says they want Picard's Enterprise E to go patrol the neutral zone because the Borg are coming and they don't particularly trust the judgment dealing with the Borg.
Yeah, and see, I got a whole bunch of. Don't get me started on that because we've talked about this before. I've got a whole bunch of things that I loved the best of both worlds, but the fact that in the real world, after losing that many starships, there's no way Will Riker would have been allowed to be first officer of the Enterprise at that point. They wouldn't have let Picard have command back, number one. Number two, they wouldn't have demoted the captain that won the battle, essentially, Captain Riker at that point, because he did get a field promotion to captain. So they wouldn't have demoted him to commander. And being that short on experienced officers, there's no way they would have let him stay as a first officer on the Enterprise. They just said, here's a starship, you're taking it, end of story. You can either be promoted to captain and have the starship, or you can resign your commission. But I understand. I mean, it's a TV show. You can have the same characters over and over again. I get that.
No,
but
I was gonna say for the sake of plot convenience, I'm fine with it. But if I really thought deeply about it, which I've never gone that deeply with it, because if I go too deep thinking about stuff, then it starts to bother me and I can't unthink it. And let's not do that.
That's one that's always. I tried not to do the same thing, but that is one that has always grated on me.
I guess that's kind of like how the idea of a Cobra Viper defecting to G.I. Joe in the form of Mercer is a neat idea, but he has to be a renegade. There's no way he'd be serving with the rest of the Joe team because there's no way in hell the team would trust him.
Yeah.
They would always figure he's working for Cobra as a spy. I mean, I get it. That's one of those things that's always kind of bugged me. That's why I kind of like the way they handled him in the movie. And he's with these other misfits that aren't going to fit in with the team. That makes sense because the rest of the Joes, they'd be like, no. But I can't. I can't help but feel like when I'm watching Picard, that we saw the Federation at kind of its worst. I mean, I did appreciate why Picard quit when he did. I mean, it was kind of shitty what they were doing.
Yeah,
but
and I got a question for you on that before
you.
So here's a I don't know. Here's a question for you. Answer this for me. Romulus explodes, right? Or the sun goes
supernova.
Supernova. Is rescuing the Romulans a violation of the Prime Directive? It's an interference in the natural evolution of the species.
Huh.
I know. I was thinking about that this morning. I'm like, wait a minute.
Huh.
That's a violation of the Prime Directive. I mean, I get that they're, that they're supposed to be a humanitarian organization and they're supposed to try and save people, but this is an extinction level event that would have naturally occurred. They are interfering with the natural evolution of the species.
That is a very good question that I don't know. I certainly never thought about it this time. I may have thought about it later on down the road if I did a rewatch, or maybe not. Because, I mean, let's face it, every movie series that I go back to later, I always notice new shit and I come up with different questions.
Sure.
So it may have been a while till that one came up, but, I think you're right. I think the Federation staging a rescue may have been a big ass violation of the Prime Directive
that's ever occurred.
I mean,
and if we're wrong, we've got comments. This is going straight on on my YouTube channel, so we've got comments. Sound off below. Is the rescue of the Romulans a violation of the Prime Directive? Yes or no?
I mean, maybe it is. Not? Maybe it is, and I would get why Picard would want to go through with it.
Sure.
Because really, as often as he would lecture or preach about the Prime Directive, he was very good at violating it when the plot needed him to.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the things that in fact, there's even a joke about it in First Contact when the 21st century Earth woman, Lily Sloan, is injured, and Dr. Crusher says, I can't treat her here. I need to take her up to the ship and treat her in the med bay. And Picard tries to stop her, and Crusher looks at him and says, no lectures about the Prime Directive, Captain. I swear she'll be unconscious the whole time. Right. Obviously, that doesn't work out. And I'm greatly amused by that scene every time. I mean, Kirk and Sisko and Janeway and Archer, they were...
The Prime Directive didn't exist for Archer. They didn't have the Prime Directive yet.
No, they didn't, but they had an ideal in place where they tried to... It is before the General Order 1, which is the Prime Directive, was established, but they are hammering away at a theory of it throughout the show.
Okay.
But you're right, that can be dismissed because it wasn't in place yet. It wasn't established yet. But all the other series is the leaders, they do violate it when the plot needs them to. And you're right, a lot of times as a viewer, I can get behind it when it does violate it.
Yeah.
But there are other times where it is kind of necessary. Like the idea of every time an alien race in the Delta Quadrant would try to manipulate Captain Janeway to give them some of their weapons. She doesn't, because obviously it's going to violate the Prime Directive. Right. And there was one plot line where she did help this race of hunter aliens who were running out of prey to hunt, where she does share their holodeck technology with them so they can stop hunting other living beings and they can hunt holographic things. But then that comes back to bite him in the ass when the holograms get too advanced and they rebel and they want to strike out on their own. A lot like I saw a lot of mirroring of that with new Dr. Soong with the synth colony on this planet in Picard. I did not have a problem with another Dr. Soong because it's kind of a running joke in Star Trek now, because in Enterprise,
Yes, I
there's
watched that one last night.
yeah, I was gonna say that there's a Dr. Soon ancestor, and so I don't have a problem with that. The problem I had, and you mentioned Bruce Maddox, was there were two giant problems with that I had. First of all, yeah, Bruce Maddox is a douchebag,
Yeah,
and I don't like the fact that after what he tried to do to Data, that they bring him back,
they
and
make
it
him like
turns out,
completely altruistic.
yeah, where he's continuing his robotics research, which is great, and Data's helping him with it, which, I guess. But the big problem I had with it was, okay, the synthetic life is the research is stopped. They're banned after they blow up the Utopia Planitia shipyards on Mars. So he goes off into exile to continue his research. But then when they get to the colony, well, obviously Bruce Maddox shows up, which he was played by a different actor.
I was wondering
And
about that.
yeah, it was a completely different actor. And honestly, um, sometimes cast changes don't bother me. But in this case, if you're going to bring back a character that's so far in, and so if you're going to bring back a character that was so early on in TNG's run, and you're going to build an entire plot line out of him,
Yeah,
and Data, I kind of wish they had gotten the same actor back. I mean, I get it. Maybe it's possible the actor did not want to return, especially if he was coming. But I mean, I have no doubt they probably talked to him. They probably offered it to him. He probably had his own reasons for maybe turning it down. But it really, for my own personal viewing satisfaction, it bothered me because the different actor, I just kind of felt like, well, why make him Bruce Maddox if it's not Bruce Maddox?
yeah,
Because the actor that played Bruce Maddox, he's alive and well. It is entirely possible, because Bruce Maddox is talked about in the first couple episodes. He doesn't show up until like the 5th episode.
yeah.
And in that episode, he's murdered anyways. So
Right.
it is entirely possible that the actor, that they probably talked to him and he's like, well, you're going to bring me back just to kill me off? Maybe not. Or,
Yeah, I think that was one of the complaints my wife had. There was so many build-ups to these potentially epic plot points that just like build up, build
fell
up, build
flat.
up, and then just
Bruce Maddox, yeah, because once so he's brought into the show, he's rescued, and then he's murdered again. That was part of the conspiracy with the admirals, why he was killed by the person he was killed by. But when they finally get to this colony world where where they thought he had exiled himself to, because there's this whole colony of synthetic life that Bruce Maddox and this other Dr. Soong had created together, I kind of felt like if there's another Dr. Soong there whose ancestor is the one that built Data and Lore and B4, if there's another colony there, what did he really need Dr. Soong's help with? I mean, what did he really need Dr. Maddox's help with? He could have
yeah,
created all those by himself.
right.
Well, and then that gets into an issue that I had that spins off from that. This show does a lot of call outs to previous history that we saw on screen.
Yes,
But at the exact same time, they would go out of their way to ignore other references that they could have made.
for instance,
Okay, when the show starts out, they outright acknowledge Data's death in Nemesis.
yes,
And they went so far as to, when Picard's on Earth and he goes to see the robots, the robotics lab that Maddox had worked in, they open the drawer, and we find the parts of B4, who's the android that replaced Data after Data died.
Right.
And they said that basically, even though Data put his memories in it, it wasn't an advanced model, and it broke down, and it didn't really work out. But this did two things. First of all, I found it interesting that they acknowledged Nemesis the way they did, because for a long time, Nemesis is not a good movie. It is a terrible, terrible, terrible movie.
I wouldn't go that far, but yeah, it's not one of the better ones.
I used to make a joke that I thought, Nemesis involves Romulus. We finally see the planet of Remus and the people that come from it, and they're a major plot point. And I used to make a joke that I thought 2000, that since so few people liked that movie, including the people that were involved in making it, I used to joke that 2009, that movie, when they blow up Romulus, I thought it was kind of an apology for making Nemesis. We're just going to blow it up, and we're just going to pretend that shit didn't happen. Well, okay. Obviously, I was half joking, half being cynical about it, but it turns out it is a major plot point in this show. So they talk about B4, and then later on in the show, the liberated Borg, Hugh, shows up.
Yes.
And in none of these scenes, again, we talk about Maddox, we talk about the Soongs, we talk about B4, we talk about Data, we talk about Hugh, and they never mention lore.
Thank you. I was just going to say that.
Not once.
I was just going to say that. The whole time we were watching this, I couldn't remember how lore ended, or if he ended.
Lore did end. It's in an episode with Hugh. Okay.
That's what Emily was saying.
Yes.
I don't know that I've seen that one.
Hugh is liberated by the Borg. Okay, I want to say, I think Hugh's designation, I think it was 3 of 6. So this Borg is brought aboard the Enterprise because there was an accident. Most of the Borg on this planet that he was deployed there with were killed, and the Enterprise crew brings I think it's 3 of 6. He's brought on board because they're gonna kind of try to reverse engineer him, trying to get some intel into the Borg, trying to figure out what they can do to find a way to combat the Borg. Well,
are they going to introduce the virus? And that's why Picard's like, no, we can't do this. It's not ethical.
You're right. They are going to introduce the virus. The virus thing, I forgot about that. You're right. It comes up again later on Voyager because somebody in the Delta Quadrant actually figures out a way to do that, and that's exactly what they do with it. But in the process of trying to work with this Borg to figure out what makes the Borg tick, the crew kind of grows close to him. They talk to him. They learn from him. They kind of encourage him to, well, we could send you back to the collective, but they might not want you. What if you decided to be a free-thinking individual? Which is what he ends up, I can't remember why, but he ends up picking the name Hugh. Hugh comes back later, a season later, where there's a whole bunch of other Borg, because he did end up going back to the collective. And the collective did end up doing what Picard said he thought they might do. They did cut him off. They basically did exile him because when he got back, he started talking to other Borg.
Right.
And there was a bunch of Borg that just decided, he basically talked their humanity back into them. So they all get exiled to this planet. And Lore jumps in on this and he creates a rebellion. He tries to build an army. He recruits. No, he doesn't recruit Data. He actually manipulates Data's programming to turn him into basically an emotional basket case, like Lore already was. And at the end of this, Hugh comes back. There's a giant threat to the Enterprise crew, and really, it takes a lot. But Hugh finally does decide, no, I'm going to help the Enterprise crew. They're the ones who freed me. Lore is completely deactivated after that. It is the last appearance of Lore. I think he's disassembled by Data because he does not want Lore brought back, because his emotionally unstable android predecessor brother, every time he showed up, was basically nuts, and he was never good news. So Data has him disassembled, and then he's never, ever brought up on Picard. And that drives me crazy.
Yeah,
like I said, they do all these callbacks. They shout out all these things. 7 of 9 talks about the Delta Quadrant and Voyager. They even bring a character that was another liberated Borg from that show into this show just to kill him off.
Just to kill him. It pissed off my wife.
Yeah, he's brought in one scene. He's killed horrifically.
Yeah.
But then Janeway is mentioned, but nobody else is mentioned.
Right.
There is no. What I was kind of hoping was that if we weren't going to see anybody else from the Voyager crew, I was kind of hoping that from maybe secondhand accounts we'd find out a little bit about what some of these people, what they did after they got back from the Delta Quadrant. Because one mistake I think Voyager made was they get them back to Earth, but it isn't until the last episode of the last season,
right,
where I think they should have, once they got back, I wish they had spent a couple episodes with them on Earth but they did.
I'd agree with that too. I like I said, I'm still catching up on Voyager because I kind of stopped watching mid DS9 because I got really, really tired of the Bajoran politics. Got really old for me.
I can see that.
Yeah, but we've got a channel here that shows Star Trek every weeknight, and it starts with the original series, then it has an episode of Next Generation, then it has an episode of DS9, then it has an episode of Voyager, and then it has an episode of Enterprise, and we watch that every weeknight. So I'm getting caught up on DS9 and Voyager. And there are a lot of decent DS9 episodes that I wasn't aware of because I just I can't stand the fucking Bajoran politics all the time.
Yeah, see, I can see where you're coming from there. I don't mind, but I think I don't mind so much because I like the story of it. I like the reason the Cardassians are such a big part. And I really like the character of Kira Nerys.
Yeah.
So I don't so much mind, but you're right. There are episodes that I watch and I'm just like, this again. But here's the funny thing. Now on this show, okay, again, we get 7 of 9. They bring in Ejeb, however, whatever. They do make reference to things. But during Nemesis, during the movie Nemesis, Worf basically leaves Deep Space Nine for a little bit, basically to go to Troy and Riker's wedding in the movie.
Right.
In that movie, they ask how Deep Space Nine is faring in the Dominion War, because the Dominion War basically it encompasses the whole Alpha Quadrant. So I mean, it's a mess. I mean, for 4 straight seasons on the show, that's all it is the war. At the end of the show is the end of the war. And again, the Dominion War is never mentioned on Picard. Never mentioned. Now, the Enterprise itself was never directly involved in the Dominion War because, again, it's a big quadrant. They had other things going on, but they were. But see, Romulus actually enters the war And that is how they become allies with. I mean, there was there wasn't a treaty, but they were allies of the Federation. Well, um, in Nemesis, when the Romulan Senate is assassinated, it's Picard that comes in to try to help because they're like, "Oh, this is terrible." So he goes in to try to clean up the situation. So we do see that he does have a relationship with the Romulans. So again, it makes sense that he would want to help rescue the survivors of the. But that there's no mention of the Dominion. There's no mention of
Yeah.
anybody else from Voyager. There's no mention at the end of Nemesis. Riker finally gets his own. He gets his own ship. He does finally stop being Picard's first officer.
Well, I
And
think that they don't really go into it, but they made it sound like that he was a retired captain.
he was. But see, the thing is, his ship that he got that we never saw on the screen, he basically transports over to his new ship, which they mention is the USS Titan, but we don't see it on screen. And we know that this
There's
is
a whole
14
series of
years.
novels of that, though, and I don't know if those are canon.
They're not canon.
Okay.
They're
I read the first
basically
one, and it wasn't bad.
no, it wasn't bad, but they're not the Star Trek novels. They're not like the Star Wars novels where they don't count towards the big picture. They sort of fill in the gaps, but they're free to ignore it or not ignore it if they want to. But so the USS Titan, he gets his own command, and now this show is set 14 years after that. So no, this show is set I think 16 years after that. But we get to see Roy and wow, I would say Roy and Triker. So we see them on this show, and they have a kid. They had two kids, but that was depressing as all hell, and I really don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he says he's a retired captain, but he didn't name check the Titan, and I kind of wish they had.
Yeah, same here.
We don't. And then one of my hangups. See, the last two episodes of this show, I did enjoy it, but it turns out. I mean, I like Data, and I like Picard, and I like their relationship, especially the way we saw it in the movies, where they get a lot closer, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
But the entire last 15 minutes of this show is I mean, it's 15 minutes that he has a final conversation with Data that lasts at least 4 hours. That's what it felt like. The makeup for Data is wretched and awful, and it barely looks like him. And no, that's nothing against Brent Spiner. We all age, but the actual makeup itself, if you look at what Data looks like, yes, the wig is wrong, the hairline is wrong, the shade of his of the pigment on his skin is wrong, the eyes are wrong. Stop it! It was a lack of attention to detail. But Picard had so much potential, but sometimes I felt like they wasted it. And those two Romulan characters that were
I really like the
supposed to be
Romulan
brother
characters.
and
I was
sister,
expecting at least one of them to go with him.
Well, see, all right, it turns out this whole show was a Romulan conspiracy because it turns out there's a religious group that fears that synthetic life is going to end all life in the universe. There's this whole thing. But the two main Romulan characters that we get to see that are the bad guys are their brother and sister. I don't know if they're twins. Yeah, I don't know if they're twins, but they're definitely brother and sister. But they're very flirty. They're very
touchy-feely.
Yes, they're very involved with each other's lives. And
Maybe that's normal for Romulans. You don't know. Don't judge.
no, I don't know, but I know. I mean, hey, whatever works for people, But I
Again, I
didn't
think it was
like.
one of those things that they're doing because they can.
Yes, you're right. I think it is another instance where, hey, we can do this. Let's do this. But honestly, and entirely due to the actor uh, who plays the brother, he shows up from the very first episode, and I didn't like him. I didn't like him at all. I didn't like the actor. I've never seen him in anything else, but I so strongly disliked his character on this that I fear that if I do see him in anything else, I'm probably just not going to like him. Kind of like I don't like Jude Law at all, ever. That guy sucks. And then the sister on the show, I mean, she's supposed to be kind of a badass, but she's just
kind of creepy.
Yes, she's creepy. She's just kind of a bitch. Honestly, she was a little bit Bellatrix Lestrange.
Yeah, that's an interesting analogy.
I don't really need the Lestrange family in my Star Trek. They are, you know what it felt like? It felt to me like they were less Romulans for the Prime universe. I really felt like those two would fit in very well with the Mirror universe.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
And
I saw where you're going with that. And I would have to agree with that.
I am on the side of fandom that is not a big fan of the Mirror universe.
I like the Mirror universe in the original series. What I've seen with it, like what they did with it in DS9, I'm like, this is just weird.
I see, and this is one of the problems that I felt like with this show all the way through. Now, the way they show even though the Federation in the Mirror universe isn't the same Federation that we have here, part of me felt like the Federation portrayed on Picard was more like the Federation that was depicted in the Deep Space Nine Mirror Universe episodes, where the characters are a little trashier, everybody's a little bit more of an asshole, and there's a lot less restraint of the behavior shown by the characters. And I kind of felt like that's what they were doing here. Discovery brought the Mirror Universe into it. And for a show that takes place 10 years before the original series, that too was a very different.
I haven't seen that any of that. I don't know how many episodes of that there are, but I have not seen that. I've said, like we've talked about before, I'm not a huge Enterprise fan just because I don't like stuff that completely rewrites stuff that already exists. I mean, some of the stuff they do completely retcons both the original series, Next Generation, DS9, and Voyager. So you're completely ignoring four. I mean, the Xindi. I mean, what? It's annoying to me. And then to throw time travel in there on top of that, which is just another lazy plot device.
Hey, we are not going to call time travel a lazy plot device on this podcast. No, sir, we are not. You are wrong.
I'm not, but it's as lazy a plot device as lens flare is a lazy photography device.
Okay, well, I don't notice the lens flare, but I will give you that simply because you're an expert and I don't notice it. So it can't bother me because I don't notice it.
Emily noticed it. She's not an expert. She's like the friggin' lens flare.
Okay, well, bully for her. She's clearly a better person than I am, but you are wrong about time travel, sir. You are wrong.
Nope.
You are wrong.
Nope.
Wrong.
Nope.
Wrong. We can do this all day, but I'm not gonna. I can't. Uh, I don't mind some retcon. I didn't mind the
I
retcon
don't
that they
mind
did.
some retcon. Like I said, the only thing that I liked about 2009 Star Trek was the fact that they blew up Vulcan because I got to see Winona Ryder die.
Yes, I can see why. Oh, that's right. Yes, yes, you're. Well, to say you're anti Winona Ryder is kind of an understatement.
I liked her in
It's
Beetlejuice. That's it. Oh,
um.
and she was all right in Stranger Things too. But
I
so.
was gonna say, well, you mean well, because she was playing crazy, and hey, she's pretty good at that. But see, I like the 2009 movies, but that for me is as much about. I like the way those actors played the TOS roles, even though sometimes they were different than what we saw. I like the fresh take on it.
The
And
only one that I will agree with you on that is Carl Urban for Dr. McCoy.
Okay, first of all, Carl Urban is amazing. He's amazing in everything I've seen him in.
Yes.
But he was so good as McCoy. I think at some point he was actually channeling DeForest Kelly
Yes.
and recreating his performance. Are you out of your Vulcan mind? Is my favorite line from that series of movies. I like Enterprise. I like the idea of it. One of my favorite aspects of the JJ verse is that it fully acknowledges and expands on the Enterprise era of Starfleet. Because yeah. But see, I love it. But where the timeline diverges after the Enterprise timeline, so what we see there for the rest of it is a different universe. But I kind of wish, and see, Discovery does. It's a visual reboot of TOS where it takes place 10 years before the original series, and it basically shows us with modern technology what the 23rd century probably should look like instead of, I don't know, cardboard and the go-go boots and
go-go boots are awesome, dude.
and
And go-go and thigh-high boots, man.
Well, see, the TOS movies use the go-go boots and the capri pants and the the sweaters. They use the same uniforms, but obviously they use different material. But see, Discovery doesn't do that, which is fine. I mean, it's earlier in the timeline, so they got a different uniform. But they kind of use the technology more the way, because if you think about it, if TOS had been made in the 80s instead of the Next Generation, it would probably still look a lot like the Next Generation. Absolutely. Every time they come out with a new iteration of Star Trek, it always reflects the time in which it was made. And
exactly, and that's my biggest hang up about prequels is, maybe it's just me, but I have a hard time getting past. I don't like the fact that the technology looks better than it will in the future. It's a plot hole for me, and it's just I get that it's supposed to be a prequel. I get that they have better better cameras and better film techniques and better special effects nowadays, and they are going to use them, of course. It all makes sense, but I don't.
And see, that's one of my favorite things about it, is because it does show me the universe earlier, the way with new techniques. And see, I don't mind.
The only time I think that's ever worked, and this is probably a very unpopular opinion, was Star Wars. The technology in Star Wars has been the same. Like, inverse technology has been the same. I've actually seen discussions on that. It hasn't changed since before the Knights of the Old Republic. The technology hadn't changed that much. That people are saying, you know, it should have progressed significantly since the time of the Knights of the Old Republic to A New Hope to, you know, the Force Awakens. I think that's an interesting point. I think it's a valid point, but
It's a
I like
fictional
the fact that
universe.
it
Who gives a
hasn't
shit?
because it's, to me, it's seamless. Then the
It.
technology doesn't change.
I do like some consistency. I get that, like the consistency in the Star Wars universe. I actually kind of like. The one hang up that I had with Knights of the Old Republic. Now, I never played the game. I
No,
never
I haven't
needed
either.
to. But I never played the game. But you know, I know about it. I read the books. I bought some
There's
of the
a.
toys.
I'll see if I can find a mini. There's a trailer. They've done. They somebody's. There's like 3 games I think, and they've stitched like the trailers together, and it's like basically like a half an hour Knights of the Old Republic movie, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I've seen that, and it's cool. My one hang up with the Knights of the Old Republic is that 3,000 years before the prequels, there are Republic troopers that are in white plastoid armor that are not clones, but they look like clones. If you're going to have Republic troopers, don't have them look like the stormtroopers that lived 3,000 years later. Don't do that shit. I don't mind all the other technology being the same, but do not put stormtrooper looking troopers into those games and then have me take it seriously. That's not going to work. They look like stormtroopers. They
I
should have
love
looked
those,
like something
and
else.
that is a hard figure to get. If you can, I think I've got 3 of them. I've got one
But
loose and I got 2 on the card, and those are fantastic figures. I wholeheartedly disagree with you. I think it is that particular character and that particular figure is an amalgamation of Death Troopers and Stormtroopers, and it's a work of art.
Yeah, but it doesn't belong in that time. Never mind. We're not going to debate this. Hey, all right, do me a favor. Pause it. I'll be back. Okay. All right. Hang on.
All right, there we go. We're back.
I mean, don't get us wrong. There were definitely things about Picard that we liked. You know,
Oh,
one of my
absolutely.
favorite things about it, I've always liked the evolution of Starfleet uniforms. And the Starfleet uniforms that they show us of the post TNG DS9 uniforms that we see that Starfleet's wearing after the destruction of Romulus and Mars, those are really cool. And then the updated uniforms that we see at the time the show takes place, like when Riker shows up at the end wearing that, those are cool uniforms.
Absolutely.
And I actually kind of hope that in season 2 of Picard, I hope they keep the uniforms that they were wearing at the end of the show. And just for seeing more of those uniforms, I wouldn't mind if Starfleet had a bigger presence in season 2.
I think one of the things that I liked the most about Picard was the emotional development of 7 of 9.
Yes, she wasn't. I like that we actually get to see. I like to see the trauma that, I mean, obviously, we plenty of times on Voyager, we did get to see some of her damage from being an individual again after almost 20 years of being a Borg drone.
Yeah.
But what we never got to see was what she was going to experience when Voyager was back in the Alpha Quadrant. And really, they get back to the Alpha Quadrant, and within a couple years, that's when the galaxy starts. I mean, when they get back, the Dominion War is in progress, but again, they're not direct participants in it either. But within a couple of years, that's when Romulus is destroyed, and basically the shit hits the fan. And we get to see one of the things I don't mind is that we find out that the banning of synthetic life and it basically it puts the galaxy in a different shitstorm than like the Dominion War did, because at least there you can say, well, it's an ongoing war. Even the people that aren't on the front lines, there's still some ramifications from it. Whereas Picard quits, Starfleet tries to go on about its business, but they're trying. The Federation puts a big ban on artificial intelligence, and they for for an organization that was evolving into having holograms and the possibility of more artificial intelligence being integral to what they were doing, suddenly they get rid of all the artificial intelligence. They leave the holograms behind, but there's at the same time, galactic opinion of the Federation goes into the shitter, basically, because from the outside, everybody else watching what happened with Romulus, everybody's like, oh shit, if the Federation can abandon them, then they can abandon all of us, and hey, chaos ensues. All right, fine. But I kind of liked that there was a project to reclaim some of the damage that the Borg had done.
Yeah.
That was a nifty idea.
That was pretty cool.
Like so many characters that were basically recovered drones, because in this universe, or in the Alpha Quadrant, the only time we got to see it was with Picard, but he was only a Borg for a brief time, so it was easier for Dr. Crusher to reverse that damage. He was not. He was Borgified, but not to the level where a lot of the drones that we see elsewhere. I mean, he wasn't a Borg for very long. 7 of 9 was a Borg for like 20 years.
Right.
And they were in their home territory, the Delta Quadrant. They were much more established. But I kind of like the seedier side of that. We get to see a lot of because basically what was they returned from the Delta Quadrant with a Borg drone who is no longer a Borg drone. And I actually think that they got the idea, because the last time we saw Hugh on Deep Space Nine, he was still a Borg.
Right.
Or on TNG, when we see him at the end of the Descent, or in Descent Parts 1 and 2, he's still a Borg. He still looks exactly like he did the time before that we saw him. This is the first time we got to see him return to his more human form. So really, Voyager gets back. Starfleet discovers, hey, they've got a Borg, they've got a drone who's been liberated, and she looks mostly human. And I think 7 of 9, I think she's the reason they got the idea to, let's see if we can liberate other Borg. Instead of trying to kill them all, what if we just tried to help get their humanity back? I like that idea.
And as a interesting, one of the things that you mentioned was missed opportunities. So the whole ban on synthetic life, missed opportunity here. What happened to the doctor from Voyager?
Oh,
he was, I think, a case could be made to be argued that he was sentient by the time they got back to the Alpha Quadrant.
Oh, I will say he was definitely sentient. Funny, because there's an episode of Voyager where there's another ship that they discover in the Delta Quadrant that was like a quantum ship, and it turns out there's a new model of the EMH that they're working on, played by Andy Dick. And well, Andy Dick, he sucks, he's awful. But they weren't as crazy about the program that they used for the original EMH, but where that EMH has a little bit more personality than what the Voyager Doctor started out with.
Yeah.
But you're right, he wasn't nearly as advanced. And then by the end of Voyager's run, I would say, I think you're right. I think the Doctor, he was sentient. He had the mobile emitter, which let him go anywhere in the
Right.
ship and down to the surface of planets and shit. But he had such an individual personality. I would say his mind was in a different way. Just about every bit as advanced as like Data's.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm curious what
Because
they would have done with the Doctor during the ban then.
um, that's a good question. I don't. What did they do? Because, like I said, um, he was the most advanced hologram in the galaxy. I would say at that point. See, it's funny because Deep Space Nine has an ongoing recurring character named Vic Fontaine, who's he's he's a creation of the Hollow Suites there, where he's like a nightclub, a lounge singer from like the 50s, 60s. He's the Frank Sinatra type. The running joke with him there is that he knows that he's a hologram, but none of the other Hollow Suite characters know that they're holograms, because he makes a joke that he jokes that um, Worf is mean, and the rest of his lounge band want to quit. And I think Julian Bashir says, but they're holograms, and Vic Fontaine's like, yeah, but they don't know that. They think they're real. I'm the only hologram here. They were experimenting with that on Deep Space Nine, but again, he was well aware that he was a hologram, and he wasn't nearly as advanced as. But I have to think that if he continued to be active like the Doctor was on Voyager, then really they could have had two holographic characters that they could have said, hey, we could actually go with this. You're right. What? I mean, we did get to see the emergency holograms that Rios had.
Right.
So we know those.
That they're still using that. They're still using that technology.
Yeah, so you're right. The holographic technology, that didn't go anywhere.
Right.
But you're right. What happened to the actual Doctor from Voyager? And they had to have had some fun with that. I mean, Voyager gets back to the Alpha Quadrant. Janeway gets her promotion to Admiral. 7 of 9 gives the engineers at Starfleet or within the Federation, hey, we could, help the other board. But you're right. How'd they react to the Doctor? Because, I mean, they had Starfleet engineering where Barclay is he's assigned to Earth with Starfleet engineering during Voyager's run. We saw Barclay a couple times.
Yeah, I haven't seen that episode yet, but Emily mentioned it to me because Barclay has like this like pet project that he doesn't believe that the Voyager was destroyed, and he thinks it was sent to the Delta Quadrant. He's the one that initially makes contact with them.
Yes, he is the one that makes contact with them. He is, and he is the one who figures out how to start sending messages to them. And it was his instructions that helped Voyager be able to communicate back to the Alpha Quadrant. For a while, they get semi-regular correspondence from the Alpha Quadrant because of Barclay basically being obsessed with how do we get Voyager back to the Alpha Quadrant. Right. And he's a recurring character. I think he's got 3. I think he's in 3 different episodes of Voyager, all where every time we see him, his research into how to help bring them back has advanced further. And it is really cool to see that. I do kind of wish, again, I kind of wish that maybe the last episode or 2 of Voyager, or even more, I don't know, had actually just been Voyager on Earth. I would have loved to have seen Barclay's reaction to how advanced the Doctor was. I would have loved to have seen his excitement that his
he geeked out
helped bring them back.
Yep.
But you're right. The Doctor was never even mentioned on this show.
Yeah. I think that's kind of kind of the pitfall of having callbacks is you've got to pick and choose who you can who you are going to bring back. I mean, there's definitely, you couldn't have brought back Riker without bringing back Troy unless you want to write in some sob story like they did with their first child. You know, but they mentioned Geordi and they mentioned Worf.
They never mentioned Crusher. She is not mentioned once. There is no reference to Beverly Crusher at all.
No, that's a good point.
And I thought that was kind of weird.
And then, you know, like we said, that 7 and 9 and Icheb were the only Voyager members mentioned, and I don't think they referenced any DS9 characters.
I mean, okay,
that's kind of, like I said, it's kind of the problem of having such a robust and fantastic universe over that spans 3 different television series. Is, yeah, okay, who do we pick and choose from? Let's see, that was, how long did DS9 run?
7 seasons.
So yeah, they each ran 7 seasons. So, you know, 21 years of,
yeah, because Deep Space Nine starts during the 5th season of TNG. Voyager starts, I think, during the 3rd season of Deep Space Nine. So there was the crossover characters right there. Loxwana Troy, she's one of the few characters to show up on both TNG and Deep Space Nine, and Q, who showed up in all 3 shows.
Yes, I still haven't seen all of the Q on Voyager yet, or I don't think I've seen all the Q on DS9 yet either.
But he was only on 1 episode of Deep Space Nine, and he decided not to ever visit again. And if you haven't seen that Q episode, I'm not gonna spoil the big joke with it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I don't think I've seen it yet.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't have to look too hard on the internet to have that spoiled for you, but it's so satisfying that, first of all, you need to watch that, you know, as soon as you can. All the Starfleet or all the Trek series, except for Discovery, are on Netflix.
Okay.
All the 90s Trek. So I do recommend the Q episode of Deep Space Nine, because, again, there's a joke I'm not going to spoil, but it is immensely satisfying.
All right.
And then Q shows up, a couple times on Voyager, and all of his episodes there are great. I mean, Q is a great character.
He is.
I did see some people saying, we kind of wish that Q would show up on Picard. And I do agree with that. I would like to see him.
Well, I think that would be tough.
Well, I don't know that I necessarily want to see Q brought into this edgy, gritty Star Trek, because I feel like
he's kind of a foil.
Yeah. I don't know if anything they did with Q would be really satisfying. I feel like a new characterization for him was, I have a feeling they'd try to do kind of a Loki thing with him, where he was always good at antagonizing Picard. He had a different relationship with Janeway, where he would antagonize her, but she had much more patience for him than like Picard did. Half their dynamic was funny because he would lose his patience with Q, where Janeway's a lot more tolerant. She would talk some sense into him, but he even says on the show, he even makes a joke, you're not as much fun to mess with as Picard was. And
Yeah,
she's
I
like,
think
I'm
that,
not Picard. But if you watch Voyager all the way through, the amount of patience and understanding and the how wide open her mind was towards everything that was weird or a little off kilter or should be dangerous, but she's going to give it a chance is amazing. And Q actually gets to see just how tolerant and understanding she is. I don't really know that we would see anything new with Q on R-rated Star Trek that would make me feel like it's worth John Delancey's. I mean, obviously, if he showed up, I mean, he's an eternal being, and obviously he'd probably say something like, "Hey, Jean-Luc, I made myself look as old as you are." You know, I
yeah.
mean, that would be all fine. But I don't know what they could do with him plot-wise that would be super different from what we saw between TNG and Voyager with his personality. And I don't really know. I don't know if he could have the fun that he did at the time because we've seen lots of foil characters on TV since, and I don't I don't know if they could make him really truly different. Um, I
Yeah,
have a
I don't know that they could. It would be really hard to do something interesting and pertinent with Q.
yeah I really feel like he'd be written more like the way the Master is written for Doctor Who, where he's basically like the crazy asshole version of Doctor Who, which is
Right.
fine and it works for the Master, and I like when they did that. Even when the Master was actually Missy, the mistress, and during 12's run, and I don't. He's always kind of like an evil version of the main character, and I have a feeling that's what they would end up doing with Q is that they'd make him like a twisted evil version of Picard, and then again, I know in the process they would ignore all of the character development that we saw on Voyager because God forbid. But I
Maybe,
don't know
maybe
if
not.
they
It's
would.
hard to say.
I would like to see. It's funny because when Deep Space Nine starts, we had seen the Ferengi a lot on TNG,
Yes.
but they were not. They were designed to be a serious threat, but they were really kind of a joke.
Right.
And what we got to see on Deep Space Nine was a fully realized culture, alien culture with a lot of substance. Like if you
Yes.
look at the Ferengi um, on Deep Space Nine and the Ferengi that we see on TNG,
It's
they're
almost a difference between the Klingons on the original series and the Klingons on
yes,
Generation.
exactly. One of the things I would like to see is how far, like if we could see on Picard the Ferengi, I would like to see how far more their society has progressed because even though they're still at the end of Deep Space Nine, whoever takes over is the Nagus. I mean, they're great. I mean, obviously, they're still a financially based um, race. I mean, they've always been that way. But I
Yeah.
would like to see. See, they did some things like they brought Nog in. He was the first Ferengi in Starfleet,
Right.
but they did mention on the show that he might not be the last one. That there might be more Ferengi that would want to go into Starfleet. There might be more Klingons that would go into Starfleet. Worf wouldn't necessarily be the only one. I would like to see that kind of stuff.
That was gonna. So
Races.
that was gonna kind of lead me into my next question: is
Yeah.
who would you like to see called back? Pre-existing character from any of the from either Next Generation, DS9, or Voyager. It can be ancillary or main.
I would like to see
Tough question.
well, I mean, I would like to see Worf back because Worf is Worf is my favorite Star Trek character.
I was going to say Worf.
for me, not to mention Worf would be ridiculous because, again, see, I was one of the people. I was when it was announced that Worf was moving from the Enterprise to Deep Space Nine. Some fans at the time were dubious because they were afraid that Worf would come in and take over the show, and that the Deep Space Nine characters might be overshadowed by Worf. Where I was never worried about it.
See, no,
I just
I
wanted
thought
to
it was
see.
more of a Marvel Comics thing where they stick Wolverine and Punisher into everything to help the book sell better. I thought they moved Worf over to DS9 to help the ratings.
Oh well, yeah, okay, I can see where you're coming from on that. See, I was never worried about it. I was only excited because, all right, at the time that I started watching Deep Space, let me give a little bit of background where I am on Star Trek. When I was a little kid, TNG was on the air. Okay, when I was a little kid, I was like 7. You were already in high school, but my dad watched it, but I
I was
watched it a
middle
couple
school
times.
when I was in
Huh?
middle school when I was 7th or 8th grade when
Oh,
TNG started.
yeah, okay. So yeah, I was in elementary school,
Yeah.
but I didn't watch it, even though it was on the air. My dad would watch it sometimes. He was in the army. We moved around a lot. Sometimes we would move to places where we couldn't always watch the shows, like syndicated shows like that. There were places we lived where we didn't really get to see them. Well, and then when I was when I was in middle school, I did remember reading like Starlog magazine and seeing things like there was the crew of Deep Space Nine, and I was like, oh, there's a new Star Trek show, but I wasn't into it, not really. And then when I was in ninth grade, um, the friend that I had, um, he was a Star Trek junkie. He was a Trekker through and through. He was a lifelong fan. Well, he when Generations came out in the theater, he talked me into going to see it with him. Even though I had seen some of TNG, I wasn't a Star Trek fan, not really. Well, I came out of that movie a big fan, and I've been a fan ever since. Um, and then I immediately started watching Deep Space Nine because it was on the air. And then shortly after that, Voyager launched, and I watched that from the beginning. Um, but there's a lot of characters that I like that not necessarily everybody else likes.
For instance,
Um, uh, I like Harry Kim. I know he's kind of I know there's a big joke about him, but
about how he's
I
an
like it.
ensign for 7 seasons.
Uh, yeah, okay. See, damn it, I knew you were going to do that, and I was going to have to defend it. Okay, I'm going to defend it right here, right now. Nobody, other than, okay, at the beginning of the show, when the Maquis crew has to team up with when half of their crews are killed, the Maquis have to join the crew of Voyager. They all get their equivalent ranks to what they were in the Maquis. After that, the only other character whose rank changes throughout that entire 7 seasons is Tom Paris.
Yeah.
When he is demoted from lieutenant to ensign for over a season, he gets himself in trouble. And
Doesn't he
then,
get re-promoted back to lieutenant though?
yes, he did get re-promoted back to lieutenant, like
Yeah.
I said, a whole season later. But at the same time, nobody else on that show, their ranks never changed. Um, Um, I mean, Naomi Wildman was born on the show. She was a baby. And then a couple seasons later, we see her as an 8-year-old. So, I mean, she kind of levels up, but nobody else does. So really, if you want to count Borg Drone to recovering human as a promotion, okay, maybe 7 of 9 got a promotion, but they actually make a joke in the beginning of the 7th season of Voyager that uh, uh, Harry Kim gets a solo mission where he gets to be in command of another ship, and he even makes a joke that if we were in the Alpha Quadrant, he would have already been promoted. But
Yeah, I think I remember that.
yeah, I think being in the Delta Quadrant, I think it was. I don't think there was a real need for everybody to get promoted. Like I said, Paris gets demoted, and I think he's the only character we've ever seen on screen get demoted.
Yeah, I think
Um,
so.
and it sticks. I mean, like I said, it sticks for a whole season. He's an ensign, but um, so I don't think there was so much a need for Kim to necessarily be promoted. I do have a feeling that when they got back to the Alpha Quadrant, um, he probably was promoted. In fact, everybody on that show probably got a bigger promotion. I have a feeling
Yeah,
they
I
may
would
have
imagine
skipped
so.
him. Huh?
I would imagine so.
Yeah, I mean, I could easily see him being skipped from ensign to briefly being a lieutenant, and then I mean, if he proves himself to be as versatile tactical officer as he was in the Delta Quadrant, I could see him hopping up to lieutenant commander in
Yeah,
short order.
that's what I was going
Um,
to say too.
but I don't. Um, See, that's one of the other things that I don't. We get to see them team up with the Maquis. Now, while one of the things while they're in the Delta Quadrant, they get the correspondence from the Alpha Quadrant. There's an episode where they actually find out that the Maquis in the Alpha Quadrant was defeated, disbanded. Their loyalists were sent to jail, and there was no more movement because they were citizens. They were Federation citizens that were pissed at the Cardassians. They start that whole thing, that movement within Starfleet to take down the Cardassians because they don't feel like the Federation and Starfleet are doing enough.
Right.
Now, while they're in the Delta Quadrant, they find out there is no Maquis. They're all upset because some of their buddies from the Maquis died or were sent to prison. I wonder how Chakotay and Bolana Torres and those characters. I wonder what happened to them when Voyager got back to the Alpha Quadrant. I would like to find out.
Yeah,
Even if
I
we
would too.
didn't necessarily see those characters, I would like somebody on the show to kind of give it to us in exposition. I would like to see Torres back. I'd like to see Kim back. Um, I like Chakotay. I would like to see him back, but I don't think Robert Beltran would coming back. Even though he's done lots of convention stuff, he's also said a lot of disparaging shit, which, okay, whatever, it's his prerogative. He can. But I don't see them bringing him back. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't bring Kate Mulgrew back. I mean, she loved Janeway. I could see her coming back. Specifically from Deep Space Nine, I would actually like to see what I would like to see where Kira and um, Ezri Dax. I'd like to find out where the Bajorans are in this time frame because
I
they
would
never.
assume that the Dax is in a new host.
Uh, Not necessarily. I mean,
No, maybe not, but I would. I'd almost be willing to bet, just as a plot point, they would go with a different host for Dax.
maybe. Yeah, maybe because I mean, Ezri was. Yeah, she's an ensign when she comes on board Deep Space Nine. I do know she was written later on to have gotten her own command of her own Starfleet, her own starship. So she did make captain at some point. But I could see Ezri coming back. Maybe not as she'd come back maybe as Ezri, and there would be a new host for the Dax symbiont. That you're probably right. They probably would get a new actor, but
Yeah.
I could see her. I could see her making an appearance on the show, even if she wasn't a joint trill anymore. But I'd like to see where she was. Um, as much as I like Miles O'Brien, I don't really care. I
Nah.
don't. I don't. Um. I like the actress that played his wife on the show, Rosalind Chow. She's a great actress, and I've seen her in a lot of stuff. But I never really felt like Miles and Keiko had a whole lot of chemistry.
Yeah.
They managed to have 2 children together, but
2.
uh, yeah. Molly's born on TNG because Worf delivers her in the turbo lift, and then on Deep Space Nine, towards the end of the show, yeah, they have a baby, and his name is Yoshi.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I'm not that
so
far along on that one then yet either.
I I just never really got the sense that Miles and Keiko liked each other all that much.
Yeah,
Um,
it was kind of
um,
funny
I
that you
don't
say
think
that.
I don't think it's nothing against the actor and the actress, but I never really felt like even they had a lot of chemistry. So if they were to bring back Miles and bring back Keiko at the same time, I would question, really, how did they last? And if they were to bring back one without the other, I would want them to waste screen time on talking about what happened. So
Right.
I think it's just better if we just don't bring them back all together, so we can just avoid all that kind of bitching from me. Okay.
Which was kind of my point, is you couldn't bring Riker back without bringing Troy back unless you had some huge sob story about why she wasn't
Yeah.
still alive.
And you know what? I kind of appreciated that. What I really appreciated was Riker's cameo in the last episode, where he came out of retirement just to lead that fleet.
Yep.
That was a badass moment.
Yeah,
That was
I like
amazing.
that.
But see, again, I when that happened, I was actually, you're right. The problem with them doing callbacks is they have to pick and choose what to call back to, and then you've always got some fan who's sitting on the sideline saying there's so much more that they could have done.
Right.
Because I was honestly
Which is exactly what we're doing, but you know.
Exactly. Yeah, every fan is doing what we're doing right now. And I was kind of hoping to see some of the captains of some of the other ships. And I admit, I was kind of hoping to see Worf there as one of the other captains. Even though he was leaving Starfleet at the end of Deep Space Nine to go be a diplomat for the Klingon Empire, it wouldn't be the first time he'd gone back to Starfleet. So I was kind of hoping to see that. But yeah, I think, I want to see more Starfleet in the second season. I don't want any more references to Maddox at all, ever.
Yeah.
And if they could avoid using corrupt admirals, that would be great too. Thanks.
Right?
Actually, if all the Star Trek shows for the next decade at least could avoid that plot point, I would appreciate that.
I think we're going to have a hard time with that with Section 31. I think that's going to. I have a feeling that's going to be a seminal point at some point if it runs long enough.
Yeah, you're right. That's inevitable. Shit. All right. You know what? Let's face it. That plot line's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Who specifically would you want to see come back?
Well, I was gonna say Worf, honestly, because for the same reasons, actually, that you had. Okay, here's an interesting one. Wesley Crusher coming back as the Traveler.
I would not complain about that. Wesley Crusher was supposed to have a bigger part in Nemesis. What ended up happening was he's on screen for like a second when they show kind of a panning shot of the Enterprise crew and Guinan when Picard is giving his best man speech to Riker at the wedding. There was supposed to be a scene where Will Wheaton actually had some dialogue and they actually interacted with him, but that was I don't even know if it was filmed, but it was cut all together. So Will Wheaton actually gets a glorified cameo where you kind of see him, but he's not focused on. I wouldn't complain about Wesley Crusher coming back as the Traveler. But see, okay, I talk about characters that I like that other people don't like. I never minded Wesley Crusher. He's never bothered me at all.
Yeah, he
was
never
he a
bothered
white?
me either because I was about that age when
I mean, yeah, sure.
it was like a dream come true for, just watching this, watching this, smart kid actually like becoming
Live on a
rich.
starship and be useful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. I mean, what was he annoying? Yeah. Was he a little bit whiny? Yeah. He was a teenager. They're emotional shitheads. But I know I was an emotional shithead. They all are.
Yeah.
But I've never minded him. I don't mind Neelix. I like the character.
Yeah, I kind of like
I
Neelix
like
too.
the wide-eyed. I like the wide-eyed optimism that he's got, the sense of adventure and the loyalty that he's got to Janeway for pulling him out of a bad situation and letting him join the crew. I like him. I like I never had a problem with Barkley. I mean, even at the beginning.
Oh no, I like Berkeley a lot. Dwight Schultz is fantastic.
But yeah, all the bitching that people do about characters like Neelix and Wesley, I've never shared it. I've never understood it. There's a character on Discovery. Her name is Sylvia Tilly, where she's a little bit Wesley-ish. She's kind of a wide-eyed viewpoint character. She's got her quirk. She's high functioning. I mean, she can be a little bit goofy, but I appreciate that about her. She's very human. She's very much a real person who exists inside of Star Trek. That is kind of one thing that I do like what they're doing with Star Trek is these feel like very real people who just live in a sci-fi universe where they don't necessarily feel tropey. They actually feel kind of well-rounded.
Yeah.
Your dog's back.
Yeah, Alice is back here with me. I think if I had to pick another character, I would like to see Tom Paris after he gets back to Earth, pulls his shit together, gets shit squared away with his dad, and becomes uses a demonstration of his potential.
Yeah.
Because he was like the preacher's kid, he was a fuck up because he was rebelling against his dad.
Yeah, and then you're right. While they're in the Delta Quadrant, he marries B'Elanna Torres. They have a kid, and you're right. He's a stand-up officer. So when he gets back, you're right. I wouldn't mind seeing him with his own ship. Hey, maybe Harry Kim happens to be assigned to a ship. Who knows?
Yeah, his first officer probably.
Yeah, I mean, I could easily see that. Yeah, Captain Tom Paris and Commander Harry Kim. That'd be great.
I think that'd be fantastic.
And as long as they dropped a reference or two to Captain Proton and the good old days.
I just saw a couple of those episodes for the first time. Those were fantastic. I love those.
Yeah, I do too. I love it too. In fact, I love that throughout Voyager's run, they give us a better look at what a nerd he is for all things Earth 20th century.
Yes.
A lot like in Demolition Man, you've got Sandra Bullock's character, Lelina Huxley, where she's absolutely fascinated by everything from the 90s. Because, she was born after that. Yeah, I love because there's in Voyager, we get to see in the holodeck, he makes an old-timey movie theater, and he makes everybody else wear the red and blue 3D glasses.
Oh, I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, I love it. He puts in the audience, and he's trying to get B'Elanna Torres to go watch the movie, and she puts the glasses on. She's like, "What the hell is this supposed to do?" He's like, "Just watch." He's like, it makes you know, she didn't get it. She was like, this is stupid. But I love, again, that he feels very human. And I can imagine by the time they get back to the Alpha Quadrant, like you said, he fixes shit with his dad. Admiral Paris gets to see that his son is no longer a fuck up. And he's a stand-up officer. That'd be great.
Yeah.
That would be great. And like you said, they could just explain what happened to the other. They don't necessarily need to show up. I don't necessarily need them to have a reunion with Seven of Nine or any of that. You know,
No,
there's
not
no
at all.
reason. You know, there's no reason that we just I don't know. Even if some of these characters only showed up in a scene, I wouldn't mind just to see them back again. Let's just show that these characters are still out there somewhere.
Yes.
And for God's sake, do not bring any of them back for the sole purpose of killing them off an episode later.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. You're absolutely right, because that's probably what they're going to do. It's like, we can kill them off because we can.
Well, and see, if that's the case, because again, Maddox, Hugh, Icheb, they were brought back just to die in the same episode. Well, no, Hugh showed up a couple episodes.
Hugh went on for several episodes.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, he was there for a few episodes before he got killed off. Although he could have been injured. They didn't have to kill him, but whatever.
Agreed. Rip that artery off, he would have lived unless that dart was poisoned.
Or I don't know, they could have done something like, I don't know, hit him in the shoulder maybe. You know, have it be a non-fatal wound. It would have been great if him and what was that character's name? Elnor, the Romulan with the sword.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be great if they had both escaped and they both joined Picard's or Rios's new little crew at the end of it. Yeah, he didn't need to die. But yeah, see, that'd be what I was afraid of, is that they bring other characters back just to kill them off. And if that's the case, I'd vote for don't bring them back at all. But then it robs us of finding out where they are. So
who else? I think one of the other things that I was going to mention about missed opportunities, bless you, is Seven of Nine when she was taking over the Borg cube. That was a whole huge buildup that went into absolutely nothing. They flushed the Borg out into space, which would not have killed them, because we have seen that Borg can can be in outer space. So they're in 0G. They just would have been floating outside the cube. She could have still reactivated them. They still would have found a way. They would have taken over that cube, and it would have made a whole interesting. I still think they could have reactivated the Borg, and they could have been hunting the Romulan people, and it still would have been interesting.
Hey,
and then you've got a live
them
Borg
back later. They could always just say they survived. They could always come back later. I did think it was cool the way she just threw herself in, like, oh, fuck it, I'll just be the new Borg queen. And then you're right, it lasts all of a second, and then she stops, which was, I felt like they were doing that just to see what would happen, but then they're like, meh. And then they changed their mind and rewrote the script there. That's what I felt like. It wasn't, it could have been satisfying, but it wasn't. I felt I had the same problem when Picard, in the very first episode, I think it was the second episode, where he goes to that his museum display that he has at Starfleet, and they have all those items and callbacks to the show. They got the banner, the Captain Picard Day banner and shit like that. I wanted to feel satisfied by that, but that felt less like him reflecting on shit that he had done. I know he went there looking for a specific plot MacGuffin device. I know he did.
Yes.
But I still felt like he goes in there and I felt like what they were doing was they were naming off trivia that the people making the show knew from watching TNG, and it was less of a meaningful reflection on Picard and more of just hey, look at these things that we remember from watching. Yeah,
Kind
that
of Easter eggs.
yeah. See, I also don't want other characters to be brought back feeling like they're just going to do that with them. Where really, I don't. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I thought that could have been cool, but not so much. Um, um, Pick Riker and his pizza kitchen. I get it. Riker was kind of a cook on TNG. He showed up a couple times trying to cook, and that was cool. But I thought I didn't really. Well, first of all, I don't know why, but I think the idea of pizza in Star Trek is odd. It was never a thing that I had thought about before, and it just seems kind of weird. Like I'm fine with the chocolate cake that Troy had such a thing for, but
Yes.
I just thought the pizza thing was weird. It was the same way in the second season of Discovery. One of the characters from a replicator orders a cheeseburger, but there was some kind of sauce that was very specific, and I just felt like I felt like it was just an odd addition to the script.
All right. I
A
I
lot
didn't.
like the prune juice with Worf. There was a
Yeah.
running joke. They even make fun of on Deep Space Nine, and it always just felt out of place to me for some reason. I can't really explain that, but
Yeah.
it's just prune juice. But I don't
It's not exactly blood wine. Let's just say that.
know.
So I think
No.
that's the whole joke there. It's not exactly blood wine.
Well, that's the other thing. They never really mentioned the Klingons on the show,
Yeah, I noticed that
and
too. I was thinking about that as well.
I mean, they didn't necessarily need to involve the Klingons because when you've
Right.
already got the Romulans and the Borg um, and the androids, it probably would have been too much if they had brought the Klingons into it. But again, I don't think they even referenced them. They
No.
did reference Worf, so by a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon type thing, I guess the Klingons were indirectly mentioned, but not really. But yeah, it was weird. Yeah, again, you make callbacks to certain things, but you ignore other things at the same time, which is
I
weird.
think you've unfortunately you've kind of got to, or otherwise you're just basically spinning your wheels in mud and going nowhere because you're too busy reminiscing and you're not telling the current story. So I mean, that I think there's a
Oh
fine
yeah,
line.
no,
And I think they
you're right.
actually did.
They
I
do. They
think they
have
actually
to.
did a fairly decent job of going back and forth between not having too much of the old stuff, but having just enough to kind of like, oh yeah, kind of the reminiscent stuff. So I will give them that. I
Yeah,
think
see, when
that's
it
a very
came,
fine line to tread, and I think they tread it very well.
yeah, I mean, when it came to new characters that I really liked, the two Romulans that worked the vineyard with Picard, the husband and wife team
Yeah, they were
that were for
badass.
LCR.
They were badass.
Yeah, they were badass. When we got to see them fight, I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then you find out, they were Tal Shiar for the Romulan Empire, which is,
Right?
of course they'd be warriors. But just talking to them and just seeing a happy married older couple who just happen to work on this in this vineyard, and you realize that Picard would be nowhere without them because not only is he unhappy in retirement and not satisfied by running the Picard family vineyards that his family had been running for 500 years, but you realize the only reason he was growing anything was because these Romulans weren't going to let him not, you know, They weren't going to, because if it was just him living on the farm, I think there'd be a lot of dead grape trees out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were great. Then we got to see him fight, and I kind of hope that whatever happens in the second season, I really want them to come back. You know, on Rios' ship, we kept seeing his vineyard office, but it's because he was recreating it on the holodeck.
Right.
I kind of wish that those two Romulan characters, I kind of wish that they would have shown up too as holograms.
Yeah, I think that as like a personal assistant.
Yeah, I really missed them when they weren't on the show, because they're on the first three.
Yeah, I was disappointed that they didn't go with them.
Yeah, yes. Either have them go or have them recreated as holograms, and I think that would have been great. Imagine if, whether they were the actual Romulans or the holographic versions, imagine those two Romulan characters responding to Rios's emergency hologram personality.
That would have been classic.
Would have been very interesting.
That's fantastic. I like that idea.
Yeah,
so
particularly
as one thing we both pointed out, that they did not reference Laura at all. What about Lal?
Oh yeah, Lal. You're right. Yeah, she was. Oh, you're right. She was Data's original daughter. Yes. I forgot about Lal. I'd forgotten all about her.
This would have been, I mean, geez, I'm sorry, but that's, like I said, it's easy to nitpick this. It's easy to armchair quarterback this, but at the same time, it's hard not to.
Yeah, it is hard not to when things like that. We've got this whole household full of various androids, or a wide variety of androids with some with very distinctive different looks. Obviously, they were trying to make a diverse population of androids, and they did a good job. They've got various levels of sophistication. Some were more yellow and synthetic looking, with the yellow skin, the yellow eyes, like Data. Some were very human looking. Like there was a pair, they looked like twin, like monks or something, yes. And they were very human looking. And then you've got Soji, where she's the most human looking of all of them. But you're right, there's no reference to Lal. I completely forgot about that.
I think that should have at least been a reference, that, the whole thing about Data's daughter, and it's like, you're talking about Lal. No, we're talking about Soji.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, where is Lal in this? Because he just deactivated her. They didn't confiscate her. They didn't break her down. She should have been right there next to B4 in the lab, if that was the case, but.
Well, because at the end of that episode, wasn't she the equivalent of like an android sickness, and basically she broke down? Like, didn't her programming go wrong and she was shut down? Yeah, but you're right.
He deactivated her. He didn't strip her down. He just turned her off.
Oh, yeah, you're right. So, you're right. So, in the drawer above B4, yeah, they should have had Lal.
Either that or Maddox. That character. Or Maddox, that's like escaped with her.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because you're right.
Because she could have been on the Sith planet. Or Sith planet. On the Sith.
Yeah. Well, what if, what if they had run into her and she was new Lal, evolved Lal, or maybe just a new model of her? Because clearly, Soji, because they're the actress that played Soji, there was clearly another android, again, with the gold skin and the yellow eyes, more like Data. It was the same actress. And I thought it was cool that we got to see the same model for the face, with different. You're right. There's no reason that Lal shouldn't have been there. In fact, if anything, Lal could have been the first android established at that.
Should have at
Even
least
if
been referenced.
yes, she should have been. Wow, that's gonna bug me now.
Oh, and I asked
Um,
when we paused. I went and I asked Emily if she thought the rescuing the Romulans was a violation of the Prime Directive, and she said yes. She thought it was.
you know, once you pointed that out, I think it was. I think you're right. Um, they make it sound like the only reason that the Romulans weren't going to be rescued was because the rest of the Federation just didn't want to utilize resources for do it, but and then Starfleet decides not to because, well, oh yeah, Utopia Planitia shipyards blown up by the androids, and then basically Starfleet's like, well, we don't have the resources. Okay, that makes sense. But you're right, they didn't mention the Prime Directive, and I think you're right, it would have been, and they probably just should have said, yeah, we couldn't violate it like that, and that's why Picard would have quit and said, instead of that, yeah, he could have just quit and said, yes, we must violate the Prime Directive this time. And they're like, no, we must not. He's like, well, I quit. Um, I that was my other question. They talk about how he quits, he resigns from Starfleet, and that's why Rafi's so pissed at him because why was she drummed out of the service? They said
Because
she's upset.
she was basically his right hand man, and I think they.
Oh,
She was going. She would have uncovered. She would have eventually uncovered the plot. She was a step or two away from uncovering the plot, so they drummed her out before she got an opportunity to figure out what was really going on. She would have exposed it in short order.
wait a minute. Okay, so Picard resigns because he feels like the Federation is abandoning people that they had an alliance with.
Yes.
And they immediately boot her out, kill her security clearance.
Yes.
But
because if she'd have continued, she would have figured out why they were not continuing to support the Romulans. That she would have figured out the Romulan attack, or the Romulans instigated the attack on Utopia Planitia.
Oh, I see what you mean.
She would have figured it out fairly quickly.
Oh, okay, yeah, because that kept bugging me. I'm like, well, just because he quits, why doesn't she just get reassigned? But okay. Oh, all right. It's possible I just don't remember.
Think she would have left well enough alone, and she would have just like, no, why?
Oh, all right. So
she would have not let it go just based on the characterization, and she would have figured out, hey, O is a friggin' Romulan mole, and the attack on Utopia Planitia was actually the Romulans in an attempt to eliminate synthetic life.
All right. So you know what this comes down to? I need to go rewatch those episodes because I created a plot hole in my head from not remembering it. Okay. That I need to go pay more attention to it. See, I'm not afraid on a show like this that I have my qualms and some disappointments with. I am not afraid to have some of the error in my thoughts exposed like this because I thought it felt like a plot hole to me. I'm like, well, just because he quits, why would she be booted out? Okay, you're right, because you're right. She was investigating. Oh, that's right. Because when he brings Soji and the dead sister, Daj. Oh, you're right. Doesn't that kind of traumatize her? She's like, it brings back some of the memories of what happened there.
Yeah.
Because you're right. Well, that's right, because she gets on her computer later and she's investigating shit, and then when she gets to Rios' ship, she's looking even further into it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
She's the one that figures out a whole bunch of stuff a whole bunch of different times in this show, so I figured Starfleet got rid of her to prevent her from finding out what was really going on, exposing the truth.
Oh, okay. So like Picard
Because
trying
she
to
she would have,
trying to rescue the Romulans was keeping her inquisitive side in check.
yeah. Because
And when
think
he
about it, if
stepped
she'd had
out,
exposed it, she'd have turned Picard into a martyr, and then that would have galvanized Starfleet and the Federation into helping the Romulans.
okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think I'm actually gonna go rewatch those episodes because I wanted to get a better handle on it. I I did I did like seeing that she's got that little trailer out at Vasquez Rocks um, in California. I like that on the screen they actually type out the words Vasquez Rocks, and it's a call out to the fact that in all previous episodes or all series of Star Trek, yeah, the original series, TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise, they do all go back to Earth. I mean, no, it's not on Earth, but they use Vasquez rocks as settings on different alien planets. And I like the fact that those rocks in that state park this time on this show are used as the location that they are because her futuristic silver trailer she lives in is there and there is nobody else around. But I did appreciate the
I didn't
taxi
see that
cab
it said
that
Vasquez Rocks. I think that's fantastic. I didn't notice that.
yeah, I noticed it right away. And in fact I rewound it. I'm like, oh my god, they actually named Vasquez Rocks and this is the first time they're paying tribute to the most that one of the most utilized filming locations for the history of Star Trek. So I did appreciate that, and I like the taxi cab that he gets into, that he hitches a ride or he gets a ride out there, and it's got the yellow and black checker pattern on
Oh, I didn't see that either.
on the hover taxi. Yeah, I did appreciate that. In the last episode, when Picard has to fly Rios' ship, and he puts his hands up in the holographic thing with the flight controls and all. I think that's kind of cool. I think
Oh,
that is
I
a
love
cool
that holographic
evolution.
heads-up display. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's like the L-Cars display that they had on the screens in the series is, but yeah, I did like all that. One of the things, once he gets on there and he starts to fly the ship, his hands are in the hologram, he starts to fly. I was very much afraid that it was suddenly going to be he's having so much fun and acting like a complete maniac, like an old man who escaped, uh, escaped his facility he lives in. He's like, because in Star Trek Nemesis, the planet, the shitty planet that they find B4 on, there's this whole big chase sequence in
Yeah.
these wheeled vehicles that were
Yes.
like Humvees, and
Yep.
it was such a terribly un-Star Trek like scene where
As much
he's
as I
having
love those
fun.
things, I have to agree with you on it. It's like
Yeah,
we're having a chase
that
scene
was
in Star
so
Trek.
bad. That was so. That was such a Hollywood thing, and it was
Yeah.
so un-Trek. And the fact that Picard's enjoying it because that this kind of off-road vehicle handling is something he'd always wanted to do. What the fuck? I was really afraid that when he started flying Rios' ship, we were going to get that where he's like, oh, look at the maneuvers I can do and all that. No, thank God they didn't do any of that shit. They actually just showed him as an old guy that's really not sure about this technology.
Right.
But I like that they quickly explained it where he says, boy, now to find out if I was watching Rios pilot the ship closely enough, let's see if I can do this.
Yeah.
And then when the Dr. Duarte has when the millennial has to help the boomer pilot the ship. All right, I did appreciate that. I was just glad they didn't do the Nemesis plot with the oh thank God. But I mean, there's plenty of good about the show. I just,
Yes.
I think I'm going to rewatch it again, knowing more what to expect. I'm going to give it a better chance. I'm pretty sure the Romulan brother and sister are still going to creep me the fuck out no matter
Yeah.
what. Because as many times as I've seen some of the horror movies I watch, like Happy Death Day is one of my favorites. But the roommate in that show, every time I watch it, she annoys me just as much. So some shit isn't going to change. Some of my opinions aren't going to change. But I'll know more about what to expect from the plot that it won't bother me so much. So I'll be happy. I'll watch it again and probably appreciate it more. But some things are going to continue to annoy me, might start to annoy me more, might start to annoy me less. I don't know. But I think they had a good idea, but I feel like in some ways they did too much with Picard, and sometimes I feel like they didn't do enough with it.
Yeah, I think that is kind of the, like I said, one of the reasons I don't like prequels is because it's a very fine line to tread with the technology. That's definitely one of the fine lines to tread with this is, doing too much and not doing enough.
Well, I saw some criticisms from some people that were bothered by the fact that it was basically an 8-hour long movie instead of being a 10-episode series. But I think it's because those people didn't like the serialization of it. But at the same time,
that's exactly what I was expecting.
Huh?
That's exactly what I was expecting. I was expecting a 8-hour movie.
Yeah, and movie. I don't see. I can't complain about that. Even though some of that stuff I felt like, because even then, even with a limited number of episodes, I still felt like some of that Romulan stuff still lingered for way too long. I think the Borg cube, to see it at first, was kind of cool, but sometimes I feel like they spent too much time there. Maybe not enough time with Picard himself. I mean, I get why they did it, but I can't complain that there were only 10 episodes and they were all serialized, because the Defenders on Netflix may have had some problems, but only being 8 episodes, it had fewer problems than the 13-episode seasons that the individual shows had.
Yeah, and we've talked about that before.
We have talked about it. And look, I loved what they did with Luke Cage, and I loved what they did with Jessica Jones. But if those, and I mean, Daredevil was good too. I still haven't seen the 3rd season, but whatever.
I haven't watched the 3rd season of Daredevil. I tried to get into it, and it just kind of lagged. And
yeah,
I did not like the 2nd season of Punisher, and I'm like a huge Punisher fan.
I like the 2nd season of Luke Cage as much as the 1st season, but
and I have not seen either season of Luke Cage.
Well, and see, both seasons had problems. I had the same problem with Jessica Jones. The 1st season had its problems, and I didn't see all of the 2nd season, but I saw enough to know she's still a great character. But all those shows, they should have had fewer episodes in their individual. If both definitely of those shows had only been 10 episodes instead of 13,
yeah,
I think they would have been
significantly
more
better.
well liked. So, yeah, I can't complain about Picard's 1st season being 10 episodes and it all being one continuing story. Sometimes it felt like not enough, but sometimes it felt like just enough. I will not say that there was any of it that felt like it was actually too much.
Without, I don't think it would have worked as a series that didn't have a continuous storyline. Without him being back in Starfleet, I don't think that's why I'm curious to see what they're going to do with the 2nd season, is because I don't know. I mean, geez, he's 90 some years old at this point. How much how long are you going to ride this dead horse? How long are you going to beat the dead horse? I mean,
Well,
believe me, I want to see more, but at the same time, what's left? I mean,
well, and
how much?
one thing, look, I hate to say it, but Patrick Stewart's in his 80s, and there's nothing to say he won't live to be 100. There's nothing to say he won't live to be 95. But there's nothing to say that we can absolutely count on the second season either. I guess it's a lot like what I feel like ever since Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Every few years they start bringing up the fifth Indiana Jones movie.
Yes.
Ever since Disney bought Lucasfilm, Indiana Jones 5 has had like 3 different release dates.
Yes.
And the latest release date had been fall 2021, I think. Now with the coronavirus and all these movie productions and shit being shut down, and a lot of movies being pushed back. Now I saw that the new release date for Indiana Jones 5, I think, is August 2022. First of all, we have to worry about Harrison Ford's old and grouchy and really old and super duper grouchy. And at some point, he's going to become too old and too grouchy to actually be, Indiana Jones, or the actor's just, going to die. And then because he's old and really, really grouchy and shitty. I'm not a fan of Harrison Ford. Never have been, never will be, like some of his parts. But, he's kind of an ass. But I don't think, first of all, I don't think we need a fifth Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah,
Because,
I don't think we do either, honestly.
You know what? As much as I kind of appreciated 70-year-old Han Solo, he's the mentor guy. He's the teacher guy who's got a big mouth. He didn't really do any action-y stuff unless you count falling from a catwalk with a lightsaber through his chest as action-y. But can you imagine 75-year-old Harrison Ford doing stunts? No. And even if it's a stunt guy,
he's kind of, I think maybe, yeah, I have no idea what they're going to do, but I just imagine him as, Henry Jones Sr. was in.
Yeah, well, see, that's the thing. Now, Harrison Ford now is older than Sean Connery was.
Yes.
When he played the first Dr. Henry Jones. But they said that Shia LaBeouf isn't going to be back as Mutt, so obviously he's not going to play the wizened old retired adventure guy to his son, which is fine. I mean,
yeah,
look,
I can't stand Shia LaBeouf.
Well, see, I like him, but he's so much Sam Witwicky to me that any other time he plays another character, I still feel like he's just Sam Witwicky from the Bayformers movies.
Yeah.
So,
and there's a video on YouTube that you'll have to watch sometime. It's him going, he says no all the time. They've stitched together every time he says no in the Transformer movies.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
That's funny. Yeah, because I remember I only saw Kingdom of the Crystal Skull once. We saw it in the movie theater.
I think I've seen it twice.
And I tried to watch it again another time later on, but I couldn't. Again, I don't like Harrison Ford that much, and having him play, the character of Indiana Jones, 15 years in the chronology after he played him in The Last Crusade was, I wasn't quite as interested. But at this point, I feel like the fifth movie
stop moving the date back. It's not going to happen. And I don't want Picard season 2. Well, I mean, if season 2 happens, great. But they've already said that they're expecting more seasons. And you're right. How much farther can they go with an actor who's his age and with a character who by the end of this thing could easily be 137 years old?
Right.
But, you know, whatever. I mean, I'm glad they got Patrick Stewart back to do it. I would like to see more characters show up next season.
I think one of the things also that I wanted to mention was the fact that Patrick Stewart rescues pit bulls, and they had a pit bull as his dog in the first episode. It wasn't one of his rescues, but he made sure that the dog that he had on screen was a pit bull.
So the dog that played number 1 was a rescue pit bull, one that he...
I don't know if it was a rescue or not, but I just know that Patrick Stewart rescues pit bulls because we had a pit bull. She died last year, but that he rescues them, and that it was he specifically number 1 was his specific request to be a pit bull.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah, see, there's trivia I didn't know about.
I asked my wife if that was one of his dogs, one of his rescues, and she had read that it wasn't one of his, but he'd specifically requested a pit bull.
Oh, that's cool. I did read somewhere that I didn't read about the rescue part, but I did read that they had to do a lot of takes with that dog because I guess the dog wasn't a very good actor or whatever. Because obviously they're animals. Sometimes they're, right. They cooperate, sometimes they don't. But hang on one second. Don't pause it. Just hang on.
I'm pausing it.
I'm back. I'm in the back room where the setup is, but I realized that I had the door closed and the cat couldn't get back here. So
gotcha.
Come here, Pringle. Come here. Oh, you're not gonna cooperate, huh? Hang on. Oh, come here, cat. Can you see him?
He's like, nope, I'm out. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, and yet fine. Now, a few minutes from now, he'll come up, he'll be meowing at me, he'll keep bumping my leg, but then I'll lean down to pet him and he'll run away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cats. Yeah. Very cooperative.
All right. So you got anything else that you want to add to this? Because I think that's about it for this.
I kind of okay, it's not very often on shows that I'll really comment on the score or the music because honestly, a lot of times I don't necessarily notice it.
Yeah, I don't either.
But towards one of the last scenes of the last episode actually used, I did specifically notice that they were using the same musical cue that they used for the opening credits. And I realized right then, hearing it within the show and not as part of the opening title, I realized that I actually realized, hey Pringle, look. I realized that I actually really like that piece of music.
Okay.
But then I also realized that the actual graphics for the opening of the, with the weird thing flying through space, and then at the end of it, you find out there are like skin fragments that go. I hate that. I realized I love the music and I hate the animation so much that goes in with it that it made me glad because Amazon will give you or CBS All Access. I watch it through Amazon. I subscribe through Amazon
Okay.
because
Yeah, I
the
think we did
CBS
too.
app itself sucks balls. I mean, it's the same price, but you can use the Amazon app instead of the CBS app.
Yeah, I think that's what we did too. And we had problems. We had a lot of technical issues with it.
There are a lot of technical problems with Amazon. In fact, because I subscribe to Netflix, I subscribe to Hulu, and some of the other ones. In the back room of the house, I can watch all of them, but Amazon I can't. I have to watch it upstairs in my room because I'm near the router. I don't know why, but Amazon has a janky connection.
See, it wasn't Amazon that was the problem for us. We had problems with the CBS on Amazon.
Well, and I think because it's part of Amazon, I used to have that same problem. If I was watching it through the Roku on the TV, it would have the same connection problems that sometimes Amazon does. But if I use the mobile app, it was so user unfriendly that I just decided, fuck this. So I canceled the DirectX and I got it through Amazon. But I'm glad that they give me an option to skip the intro because I always do.
And we did not have that.
But yeah, see,
we didn't have an option to skip the recap, and we didn't have an option to skip the intro.
Oh, okay. Wait. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because Amazon. But see, that was when I ran into the first couple episodes. I watched the intro, and then I decided, wow, I don't like it, so I would skip it. But it was so weird because hearing the music at the end of the actual show, during the show, I'm like, oh, it's actually kind of a beautiful piece of music.
Yeah.
So I went and I looked it up, and some of the song was inspired by the music that he was playing on the flute when he played the other guy in The Inner Light. And I want to mention one other thing. The Inner Light won all kinds of awards, and a lot of Star Trek fans hold it up as one of the best pieces of drama in Star Trek. And a lot of times in Star Trek, the really meaningful episodes like that everybody is supposed to really like, I tend to not like at all. And I'm going to say this right now, I can't stand The Inner Light.
Was not one of my favorite episodes either.
Yeah, I don't like the show. I don't like the episode. I don't know why anybody liked the episode, honestly. I mean, it's Picard. I mean, it's a great acting piece for Patrick Stewart. But to say it shows off Patrick Stewart being a great actor, that's not saying anything because the guy's great in everything he's in.
Yeah.
So I don't need an episode where he's playing a fake person living a fake life and it's all in his head just to say he's a great actor. Because,
well, it's kind of like the singing abilities of the Doctor in Seven in Voyager. It's like, okay, we get it. They can sing. We don't see it.
Here's the funny thing. Now, usually spontaneous singing like that on TV drives me nuts. Anytime somebody's singing, whether it's a cappella or not, whenever they're just singing and I'm not watching a musical, it really kind of bugs me. But I think Voyager is one of the few exceptions that I'm amused by it because it's so out of place. But every once in a while, I'll skip it. I get it. But I can't. Yeah, like I looked up that piece of music. I'm like, it was inspired by the music he was playing on the flute in The Inner Light. And I'm like, that was the first time I realized, oh, something did come out of The Inner Light, that piece of music. And that was it. The rest of that, shit, I don't even care. I'm not going to pull any punches. That episode sucks.
I didn't think it sucks, but definitely not one of my favorite episodes.
Well, no, I don't mean it sucks as in it's terrible. I mean it sucks as in it's not interesting. And if I do a rewatch, I just skip it because I'm not going to get anything out of it. Because I don't care.
Fair enough. All right, I think we've definitely gone on long enough for our first video episode here. I think we've hit all the spots. and I'm going to have to get
Well,
going.
well, see, this is me crossing my fingers. Hey, let's hope it works.
Yeah, and this will be interesting because normally when we do the podcast, I record it and I send it to JD to post-process it. He does all the post-processing. But since this is going to be hosted on my YouTube channel, guess who gets to do the post-processing this time?
Yeah, but when that's done, send me the YouTube link and I'll turn it into an MP3 so I can post it on our website host too, or our podcast host too.
Okay.
So people that don't want to watch it on YouTube or don't want to download it, they can just listen to
Right. So coming to an end here, this is our first video podcast. This is definitely one of the first times that we've ever been able to have, I mean, we have a podcast, it gets hosted on other things. We don't have a lot of opportunity to interact with the people that listen to this. And I do have, I mean, for me, I have, like right now, I think I have almost 250 subscribers to my YouTube channel, which is 250 more than I thought I would. So the potential for this to get watched is actually a lot better than what we did with our podcast, I think.
Yeah.
So
because the podcasting host, you can't interact. There is no comments. I can direct link to it, but that's it. And I can look at the download numbers, which ain't that high, which is fine because I don't give a shit. I'm happy if one person listens.
Exactly. So I think since we actually have a platform to interact now, I know I say this on all of my videos, please like, please subscribe to the channel, and please comment. Did you agree with any of the stuff that we talked about? Did you not agree? Why? What would you like to see? Who would you like to see? What did you think about Picard? Interact with us. And I always make an effort to answer all comments, and I'm going to look into, there's got to be a way that I can have JD as an administrator on my channel. So I'm looking at that so JD can answer comments too.
Let's get some feedback.
Also, what would you like to see us do in
because
future podcasting videos? Because if you've watched my channel, you've seen my action figure reviews, you've seen my customizing tutorials on painting, card back making, and vehicle restoration. And what else have I done? There's something else. I can't think of it. But you've seen all the stuff that I've done on my YouTube channel. What would you like to see us do on or talk about on a video podcast? Please let us know.
Yeah. Tell us what you think. Tell me I'm an idiot for not liking the inner light. I don't give a fuck. So, but see, the thing is, we don't have much of a social media presence aside of our own Facebook pages. Like we have a group for the podcast.
I have my customizing page, and that's honestly that's where most of my Facebook time is spent because I'm getting really tired of all the other shit that's on social media right now. So I spend most of my time on the customizing page.
We don't have a Twitter. We don't have all that stuff. I wouldn't, even if we had it, I wouldn't end up using it. That's why we don't have it. But we can comment on YouTube, and I'd like to see what people think.
Absolutely. So let us know what you think of the show. Let us know what you thought of Picard. Let us know what you would have liked to have seen different in Picard. Let us know what you hope to see in season 2. Let us know what you want to see in future episodes, the whole 9 yards. Comment section is open. I do try and answer all comments. Sometimes I have technical issues and can't see them or can't answer them, but I do try and get to them. And like I said, I will try and make JD an administrator so he too can answer comments. That's about all we got for this episode of our first video episode for General Geekery, and it's a huge step forward for us to be doing the video. So thanks for watching. Again, like, subscribe, and comment.